Hello, everyone. This is Erica Heilman, and this is my presentation on my analysis of the data for our course, Qualitative Methods of Naturalistic Inquiry. Today, I will walk you through my process for analyzing my data, my findings and conclusions, and then I will welcome feedback and input. To start, the research question that guided my observation and interview experiences stemmed from my question, what are people's experiences in having immediate and unlimited access to endless information? I wondered, how do people make meaning out of the information they are gathering from their handheld devices and corresponding application software such as Instagram? These questions led to the formation of my research question, what are the current practices for information gathering, and how may experiences with applications such as Instagram impact how people make meaning about the world? I use this question to identify areas of inquiry in order to determine what I want to observe in my field observation. I questioned, are applications used privately, publicly, or both? Does the use of applications such as Instagram foster communication? And if so, would it be communication with others that are physically present, or virtually, or both? These questions inform me to go somewhere where I could watch people going about their daily life to observe a range of people in a space where they may or may not be using application software such as Instagram. I decided to go to Starbucks. For my interview, I interviewed my two housemates. My reasoning for choosing them as participants was twofold. First, from my observations, they both use their phones and their application Instagram on a daily basis for extended periods of time. Secondly, because we share the same living space, the time frame in which interviews could be conducted was much more flexible than if I had chosen participants that would have required the interviews to be during business hours. My interview questions were, could you tell me about your typical day, and what types of ways do you use your phone throughout the day? Secondly, what do you experience when you look at your newsfeed on Instagram? What types of information is there? And lastly, what would you say are some of the pros to an application such as Instagram? And what would you say some of the cons are? The first interview I did not tape, but took verbatim notes as the participant answered each question. Following the interview, I fleshed out the notes and transcribed them into Excel, all of which took a little over an hour. The second interview was taped, and therefore it was recording as I read the questions and the participant answered. After that interview, I transcribed the responses into an Excel document, which took about 20 minutes. I used grounded theory as my general research approach. Therefore, I analyzed my data using an inductive approach to generate codes. Identifying what might be useful in answering my research question, I then began the phase of category construction or axial coding. Comparing the data from each interview led to tentative categories that were then compared to each other. Comparing the categories until a substantive theory is formed from the data is my next step. Starting out with coding, I want to note that I did not use predetermined codes. I broke down the transcript line by line so that I could compare each unit of information and identify patterns and assigning codes to those different classes of information. Some of my codes were communication, news, entertainment, people, images, routine, and advertisements. The end of my coding stage concluded with the surfacing of a core category naming a behavior pattern, which I named as connection. In using grounded theory, I aimed to build a theory about the phenomenon of individuals' access to information through technology, increasing the connections across humanity by decreasing human face-to-face physical interactions. As Merriam states, a substantive theory has a specificity and hence usefulness to practice, often lacking in theories that cover more global concerns. Further, grounded theory is particularly useful for addressing questions about processes, that is, how something changes over time. My preliminary findings and concluding thoughts are that our phones or personal devices are vital resources in our daily routines, facilitate connection that are both positive and negative information. I realized from my preliminary findings that I need more data and would like to come up with more questions to ask in order to gather that data. As Merriam also stated, grounded theory consists of categories, properties, and hypotheses that are conceptual links between and among the categories and properties. Merriam outlined criteria for categories, themes, and findings. Question is, to what extent does my preliminary findings for my themes and category meet this criteria? The criteria is that it must be responsive to the research question, be exhaustive, and be mutually exclusive, be as sensitive to the data as possible, and be conceptually congruent. You may find this on page 213. My second question stems from my effort to check the meaningfulness of my interpretation. What is your reaction to my preliminary findings? That concludes my presentation on the analysis of my data. Thank you very much for watching.